2004, 49-year-old Robert Springfield, along with his two teenage sons, were planning to do some hunting on the Crow Reservation, which is the homeland of the Crow tribe. Robert and his family had the right to hunt on that land. The specific spot the boys were going to be hunting was Black Canyon, a steep and rugged area. Robert had previously served in the United States Marine Corps in their Special Operations Unit. He would have received outdoor survival training. Robert's sons were very competent outdoorsmen as well. They arrived at the reserve on September 19th. Their plan was the two boys would break off from their father and head over to the edge of the canyon to drive elk down into the valley so their dad could take a shot at them. Late in the afternoon, the two teenage boys had not seen a single elk, and so they packed up their stuff. The boys make it to the meeting area, and their father, Robert, is not there. 3 hours goes by, still no sign of their dad. They have no cell phone service. As the sun was setting, the boys did finally leave to go tell authorities that their dad was lost in Black Canyon somewhere. Authorities launch a search that night that includes the use of helicopters with thermal imagers doing low flyovers of the entirety of Black Canyon, and they never saw Robert. However, authorities would say he probably went and found shelter. But the next day, despite bringing out hundreds of searchers, there was no sign of Robert. And after several weeks, they ultimately called it off. 1 year later, in October of 2005, a hunter who didn't know anything about Robert Springfield is in Black Canyon walking through this really dense forest, and he starts to hear what sounds like a crow screeching. As he kept walking on, the screeching intensified to the point where he just could not ignore it. And so he starts walking towards the crow, and this crow is sitting on the top of this stump. And as the hunter is looking at this crow, the crow looks directly at the hunter and stops screeching. The hunter felt compelled to walk out of the vegetation into the clearing, and he looks at the crow, and the crow suddenly looks straight down. And he sees at the base of the tree is a human skull, makes a note of where he is, and he runs. The authorities make their way out. When they walked up to the tree stump, they discovered it was not just a human skull, it was also a human femur bone, and then next to that was a set of boots, and then next to that was a belt, and then next to that was a jacket, and inside of the jacket was a wallet containing cash and Robert Springfield's ID card. The authorities launched a search in that area to look for the rest of Robert's remains, but unfortunately they were never recovered. They eventually determined that Robert must have been shot, and then they later recanted that statement and said he was hit by a falling tree. But if he was struck by a tree, then where is the rest of him? Why were all of his things neatly stacked? But if he had been attacked, his sons would have heard the struggle. And if a person attacked him, why didn't they take the money out of his wallet? Also, where Robert's remains had been found was located inside of the initial search grid. He would have been found in those first couple of weeks that they were looking. And perhaps the weirdest aspect is the claim by this hunter that a crow lured him over. Do you really think it's a coincidence that all of this took place on Crow Reservation, home of the Crow tribe? I think not.